It's my pleasure to introduce our main program, which is focused on higher education. In fact, our whole program today is. So let's start with a pop quiz. So keep your hands up. Question number one, how many of you went to public colleges and universities? Keep your hands up. How many went to private colleges and universities? Keep your hands up. And how many went to community colleges? All right. What you see, all those hands up, is the evidence of our system in our state of higher education system. A mix of 2-year and 4-year colleges and universities, public and private, that makes up our system. And without it, we will not be meeting the future demands of Washington employers or hopefully having jobs here in Washington for our children and grandchildren. Today, we'll discuss just one vital component of our state's higher education system, the independent colleges. There are 10 in our state, and listen to this. Among all the private universities and colleges in the country, these 10 make Washington State #1 in the country for graduation completion rates. Outstanding. So who are they? In Western Washington, St. Martin's University in Lacey, Pacific Lutheran University, the University of Puget Sound, Seattle University, and Seattle Pacific University. In Eastern Washington, 5 more. Gonzaga University, Whitworth University, Whitman College in Walla Walla, Heritage University in Toppenish. And I'm sorry, Walla Walla University, that's also in Walla Walla. Please welcome Father Steve Sundborg, President of Seattle University, George Bridges, President of Whitman College, and President Dan Martin of Seattle Pacific University to talk about the higher education system in our state. Welcome.
Thank you very much for welcoming us. I'm with George Bridges, the president of Whitman College, and Dan Martin, the president of Seattle Pacific University. You know me as the president of Seattle University. We want to talk to you about higher education and some of the critical challenges we face. We believe in the mix of the 2 universities, the University of Washington, Washington State University, the 4 regionals of Western Washington University, Central Western University, Eastern Washington University, and Evergreen, and our whole array of 32 or more community colleges that make up higher education in the state of Washington, in addition to some for-profit and some newly arrived and some branches of other universities that are with us. We're approaching this today from these 10 colleges of the independent colleges of Washington. This is our 60th anniversary as an association within the state of Washington. We'd like you to take a look at a video first, and then we'll do some interviews. So that's us. We're an important part of the sector of higher education within the state. We believe sometimes we're a bit overlooked when we give out 1 in 5 of the bachelor's degrees within the state. We're an important part of the state, and we want you to know a little bit more about us. And please feel free to ask whatever questions you want at the end about critical issues in higher education that we can respond to. Let me begin, if I might, by asking some questions of George and of Dan. Dan, could you just say a word, George, could you just say a word about how did you become president of Whitman, and what do you like best and what's toughest?
Well, let me first ask, how many fighting Whitman missionaries are there out there in the audience? All right. How many of you know a graduate of Whitman College? Quite a few of you. You know they're fanatical, aren't they? Actually, I'm a native Seattleite. I grew up in Seattle, Seattle Public Schools, Roosevelt High School, University of Washington. Yeah, that's right. University of Washington graduate, and then went on to the East Coast for my graduate training, and then came back and served as a professor at the University of Washington and dean for 23 years. Never did I expect to become a college president. Never did I aspire to become a college president. What I did aspire to be, though, is to be at a place where I could work with students face to face, as one of my faculty members says, knee to knee, in developing phenomenal experiences for young men and women that will transform their lives. And the great joy I have at Whitman is, in addition to being a president, I'm an educator. Every Sunday night, 2.5 hours, my class in our living room. I didn't have that at the University of Washington, nor did I have the privilege of teaching a class like that at the university. But the best part of our school is that it focuses on relationships. All of our schools are relationship-based because we believe that the very best learning occurs out of close relationships between professors and students. That's my story.
Thanks very much, George. Dan Martin, president of Seattle Pacific University, is in his second year as president. Dan, how did you become president at SPU, and what do you like and what's tough?
Sure. Well, since George asked, any Falcons out there in the mix, SPU grads? All right. Well, 2. All right, so I tied you. We got 2. But you probably know someone who graduated from Seattle Pacific University. Of course, we've been here as long as Seattle U, since 1891, living in Queen Anne, so we're blessed to be in that location. I didn't have any real connection to SPU when I entered the process to becoming president. And unlike George, I knew when I was 20 years old that I wanted to be a college president. Seems strange, but I set out on that path and was a president in Ohio prior to coming to SPU. But I love the role. I love the role of university president. Every day is different. Yesterday started with meetings down on the campus of UPS in Tacoma and ended with an iPod impromptu dance on our front lawn last night about 10:30. So you never know what you're going to face when you're around college students, but the opportunity, like George said, to invest in the lives of students, to engage them in conversations that matter for their own learning, for their own expansion, their own intellect, but to foster those passions for how they can see themselves making a difference in the world is a real blessing to be a part of.
Great. Thanks very much, Dan. George, you've been both a professor and also an administrator at the University of Washington and now president of Whitman College. We have these different sectors of higher education in the state. Do they compete with one another? Do they could they collaborate more? What could they collaborate together on?
That's only 5 questions, Steve. Each of our institutions, public, private, research universities, regional schools, and ours, and the community colleges have distinct missions. Each contributes to higher education in Washington, and of course, we could collaborate more. One of the great challenges I think I as a Washingtonian feel, we as Washingtonians experience, is that we have great institutions, and yet we must collaborate to serve the citizens of Washington better. That's not to say we aren't, but we can do more. We can do more. There are 900,000 state residents who have college experience but have yet to complete their degrees, who are not in colleges. How do we serve those people? How do we serve the generations, our children, our grandchildren better? We want to do that. We must do that. They are the future leaders of our country, and at least in the case of my generation, I'm a 70 student, they're inheriting a really interesting set of problems that our generation has partly created. We want to help them solve them.
Thanks very much. Dan, as a college president, could you give us a word about what are the students like who are coming to college now? Are they ready? Are there enough of them? What would help them coming to college?
Yeah, actually, the trends for the state of Washington specifically, where 2/3 of our students come from at the independent colleges, is actually trending fairly well in terms of the future, in terms of numbers. Academic preparedness is a different story. The last figure I saw for those students that take the ACT, only 25% of them are ready for a college education. So there is a lot of remedial education that comes in the door at our schools, which then consumes resources, consumes time to bring them up to the level of college preparedness. So both, there are great numbers in terms of the overall numbers and numeric numbers. In fact, nationally, 70% of those in high school are graduating, and it's higher than that in Washington. So we have about 80% of our students graduating from high school, but there is that underpreparedness that puts them at a disadvantage, and certainly the institutions as we bring them up to speed.
Could you say a word about the state need grant and how that helps students who are in economic need for coming to college?
State Need Grant has been a huge resource for our students. The independent colleges have been participating in the State Need Grant since its inception. And for Seattle Pacific specifically, our students have been awarded about $3 million a year, serving about 675 students at SPU. Now, it's a great program, and the state funds approximately 72,000 students to meet their need from a state perspective, but there's about 30,000 students that still lack that meeting that need. So there's a gap in what we're able to fund for our students, but it's a complement of federal funds, state funds, benefactors, institutional funds that help make it possible for our students to have access to our education.
Thanks. I wonder if you'd agree with me, George, that most of the people here and most people think that higher education, colleges, universities are expensive. They're also beginning to wonder, are they worth it? Is the price tag worth it? And does a great education lead to a great job? You're the president of a nationally known liberal arts college. Could you talk a little bit about how higher education at your college leads to jobs and whether the price tag is worth it in terms of what the students' future lives are like?
Great question. Clearly, we're all concerned about the cost of higher education, and I think the beauty of the private independent colleges of Washington is that most of our students leave with less debt than those who attend our public universities, our public institutions, because of the financial aid we offer and because they graduate on time. So I think we have a great opportunity here. The great opportunity is how do we ensure that more students, particularly those students who come from disadvantaged families like Dan mentioned, receive the support they need and gain the experience they want. They graduate at the same rates as students who come from very privileged backgrounds at our schools because of the support we offer. So as I see the future of higher education in this state, I think I am very hopeful, and I want and encourage all of us to ensure that all of our colleges, universities, with their own respective missions, collaborate well with one another.
I wonder about a couple examples. Could you each give an example? Maybe Dan, could you start? An example of a student at Seattle Pacific University who's been helped by a state need grant or financial aid, and what difference that's made in his or her life?
Sure. In fact, the example that Ann gave in terms of her student that's a Hamilton Scholar would be a similar story to what some of our stories are from our students. We have one student, Sandy, who came from a family that had never attended college for generations, was living at a sub-poverty level in a motel in the SeaTac area. So here was a student that really was not advantaged in any way in terms of her community, the resources that she had access to, her family understanding what college meant and what it could mean for her and her life. So as a young lady, she decided she would make a difference for her family and for generations in her family. So she began to explore what it would mean to attend a college, but it was only because of state aid, a program, a matching program that's sponsored by the ICW, federal aid, institutional funds that made her admission into Seattle Pacific possible. So now she's a fabulous student making an impact on our campus, studying business, wants to explore international business. So I know she's having an impact on this campus, and I'm excited to see what the future is for her and the difference that she'll be able to make in the world that is breaking the cycle of poverty and limited access for her family for generations.
Great example. Thanks. George, how about you? An example of similar kind?
I have a phenomenal example that was a student in the class I taught. And I had not been in the classroom for a number of years because I've been doing this day job, being college president. And I forgot that when you assign papers to students, someone has to read them and grade them. I'm sure you can relate to that. So I was signing weekly papers, 5 to 10 pages long each, to my class of 10 students. And I noticed that one set of papers by a student I didn't know exhibited the ability to take ideas apart and put them back together in new ways. Very clearly written, compelling arguments. And I thought, who is this kid? The young man's name is Ariel. He's an undocumented student from Walla Walla, Latino, who, thanks to the 4 years or 3+ years of hundreds of hours the Whitman faculty spent with him, is an incredibly accomplished scholar, and the research, and the financial aid that was provided him enabled him to be the first member of his family, his long Hispanic family, to ever even think about college. Ariel has graduated. He is in the best PhD program in the country at the University of Chicago. He will change the world. And had he not had that opportunity to be able to develop the skills in communication and writing that I had the privilege of exhibiting and reading, he wouldn't be where he is today. And if he'd not had the financial aid that ICW provided, that the state need grant provided, that Whitman provided, who knows where he would have been. It's a phenomenal story, and I'm still in touch with him. He periodically writes me. I love this kid, and there are so many like him who will have those needs.
I wonder, either one of you, but what's the college-bound scholarship program that the state has begun, and how's it doing, and is it adequate? College-bound scholarship program. You don't know? Dan?
Must not be doing all that well. I don't know about it either.
College, I'm going to answer that question then. The College-Bound Scholarship Program is a commitment that the state has made to students, but even as early as their younger years, like in 6th grade or 7th grade. If they do accomplish at a certain level, they will guarantee them to be able to go into a college in the state of Washington and to be funded at a certain level. The challenge of it is that there's been more students that have been successful at it than the state ever predicted. So it's a far higher success rate than the state thought that it would be possible. And so now the state needs to be able to come through with its promise to those students so that they could be able to come to colleges like this with the amount of money that the state said that they would give if they were successful getting through their secondary education. So it's one of the things that we as an association of the independent colleges of Washington think is very important. George, STEM. We hear a lot about STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math. You're the president of a liberal arts college. What's the connection between STEM and liberal arts, and why so much focus on STEM now in terms of higher education?
Well, there's clearly a pressing need for students who have degrees in science, technology, engineering, and math, and one would not expect that at a liberal arts college we would be emphasizing that. We are. My nephew is the center fielder on our baseball team, and I don't know how many of you know baseball players, but not always the most academically talented group, at least in some schools. No offense to all of you ball players out there. I asked my nephew, what's the favorite class of the team? What do you think the answer was? Organic chemistry. That is the most favorite class at Whitman College because of the emphasis in biotechnology, the availability of jobs, and the opportunity to pursue creative ideas in new technology. And so when we talk about a liberal arts college, one of our primary emphasis is in the sciences, but we ensure that that is surrounded with classes in literature, writing, communication, argumentation, and reasoning, so that you have scientists, engineers, and individuals who have these phenomenal skills in understanding complex biomedical problems, but who can speak clearly and effectively, collaborate with others, and work in environments in writing and delivering presentations that many students can't. So it is an integral part of our program, and I'll tell you one example. We have a interdisciplinary program that is biophysics, biochemistry, and molecular biology. I'm sure all of you would enjoy taking that degree program. 3 things happen to the graduates of those programs. They end up in 3 places, every one of them since we started the program. Medical school, PhD programs in neuroscience, or they go directly to laboratories and work in research labs. Every one of our graduates in that area is employed, and they're employed the moment they walk out the door. This is the kind of education, and when you talk to them, they're like every other Whitman graduate. They're fanatical about their education. They're accomplished, understated, and really interesting people. They can talk about almost anything. You gotta love it.
This is the 60th anniversary of the Independent Colleges of Washington. Again, that's Seattle Pacific University, Seattle U in Seattle. It's Pacific Lutheran University and University of Puget Sound in Tacoma. It's St. Martin's in the Olympia area. It's Heritage University in Toppenish. It's Walla Walla University and Whitman College in Walla Walla. And it's Whitworth University, and not last and least, Gonzaga University in Spokane also. This is 60th anniversary. Dan and George, go first, which either one of you want to. What's one thing about that association of those 10 colleges and universities that you think is least known, that should be known, or that you're proudest of?
I think you saw a number of statistics in the video beforehand. 1 in 5 graduates, 40,000 students, 2/3 of our students from the state of Washington. I think those are all great statistics for the broader community to know. But I think one of the things that maybe this group needs to know is that we want to be part of the solution in higher education for the state of Washington and be a player in the educational framework from pre-kindergarten all the way through, as we prepare teachers, as we prepare educators, as we prepare community resource individuals to go out and improve our communities. We want to be a vital solution and be at the table, be a component of the future of Washington in ways that perhaps we haven't been in the past, but we're willing to contribute. And I think for me, that's what I found from this group of college presidents and colleges, that they want to be involved and engage in making a better future for Washington than we have right now.
Great, thanks, Dan. George?
What has so impressed me about this group of schools, given my background in public higher education, is the students who have always struck me as the most impressive are those who overcome immense personal obstacles just to get to college. Those are the ones that I've loved to teach. Those are the ones that I love to work with. Our schools, our colleges, graduate those students at the same rate, with the same level of success, no matter what their background is, whether they're Anglo white kids from east of Seattle or poor Latino immigrants in Walla Walla. It is very inspiring to know that they all will do well. And I wish we could serve more, and I want us to serve more, because we are very, very effective at providing the supportive environment everyone needs to get a great education. I hope we can contribute more, as Dan has said, to the challenges of higher education in Washington State, along with the great universities of which many of us graduated. We can work together. We must work together.
Thanks. We'd like to take some questions from you, what you'd like to ask of us, higher education, critical challenges we face, or anything about this association of 10 schools.
Question from Don Kraft.
Father Steve, we assume that all of us in this intimate little organization of Seattle 4 know all about each other, but for some of us that are a little more forgetful than others, tell us your path to becoming a university president.
Thanks very much. I was kind of a latecomer, had never thought of myself of wanting to be a university president. I was the superior general, or the superior of the Jesuits of the Northwest, so I oversaw 350 Jesuits in the Northwest, if you can use the word oversee of Jesuits at all. Although we've got a Jesuit Pope now, and I think he does know how to oversee. And from that, I loved leadership, and Father Bill Sullivan, who, as many of you remember, and sometimes I'm still confused with him after 17 years. He saw me and he said, "You'd make a great university president." And I took a little bit of coaxing. I love students. I was told you don't know anything about academic administration, you've never done financial oversight, and you've never raised money, you'll make a great university president. And he said, you're a Jesuit, you know all about education, you love students, you'll find your way. I have, and that's how I got here. So, thanks for the question.
Jim Duncan.
So, been reading a lot about the success of online learning. And some people say that you can learn knowledge online much faster, less costly, but you need classrooms to learn about relationships and collaboration. Can you talk about that future where that balance between learning knowledge, the costs that you talk about, what you're seeing?
I think every school is different. So Whitman, unlike some of the other independent colleges, really focuses on the traditional college student from 18 to 22. That is a group that's going not only through a stage of learning and acquiring knowledge, but also growth and personal development. We don't believe that online learning is going to be ever an integral tool in our college, because we believe that in that window of development, personal relationships will create a passion and a lifelong commitment to learning that one can simply not acquire in an online environment. That's not to say that online education isn't valuable for adult learners. My goodness, it is. It's an integral tool. Do we use technology in many different ways in our classes and in our programs? Absolutely. But the online model of courses just isn't consistent with our mission. Other schools it is, and we'll do very well in those schools.
So let me ask Dan, how about you, Seattle Pacific University and online?
I would say the same thing, that we believe learning best occurs in community and face-to-face and in the classroom. Like George mentioned, we want to take advantage of technology as a resource, as a tool for which our faculty can leverage the exploration with our students. But like George, we will remain a residential-based university, but we do respect and value the online opportunities that are there for people that can't access our campuses in the way that we would best desire them to.
I think we'll get into a little bit more. Being in the middle of a city, we're going to be developing online courses during the summer that our students can take who are not on track for graduating on time. Next fall, we'll have a whole range of hybrid online courses, particularly at the graduate level. There's probably a little bit of a difference of the kind of university we are. We're not all the same within the independent colleges of Washington, so we're probably going to get into it a bit more than either SPU or Whitman might in the short term anyhow.
We have one last question, Jan.
Thank you.
In thinking more about getting ready for college, I remember being very scared about funding, but I remember being even more scared about the SAT test and taking that. What are your guys' thoughts on the SATs? Are they beneficial for both the college and the student? Do you use them now, and are you planning on continuing to use them in the future?
I can speak for our school. We receive the SATs, but our admission decisions are holistic. Every student prepares essays, and we actually attach far more attention and significance to the students' writing, their academic performance, the rigor of their high school curriculum and their grades, and the recommendations that they receive from teachers. Every application, more than 3,000 of them, are read twice and evaluated twice, and I can actually say I've sat in on those sessions and seen our admission teams argue over a student's paragraph. What did he or she mean by this? Is this a student that will thrive at Whitman College? So, you know, we do look at them, but as it turns out, just so that everyone knows, SAT scores in and of themselves are a very poor predictor of academic success in college. The correlation is almost zero. What matters is high school grades, rigor of the curriculum, and the recommendations of people who know the student and care about him.
Well, no, I think George gave a great explanation, and it is a different day. When I took the SAT, ACT, you didn't prepare, you just showed up because you had an exam on a Saturday. But so there has been too much emphasis these days, especially with the son now, that's taking these exams and seeking to look for a place for his own study. But like George, it's a component. We look at the student holistically. We still incorporate that into our admission process, though.
Great. Join me in thanking our
Seattle Rotary Online is made possible in part by a grant from First Choice Health, working with the Washington Health Information Collaborative to use technology to bring better health care to patients throughout the Pacific Northwest. First Choice Health.